Good morning, buenos días,
Buenos días.
bonjour,
Good to see you all.
Good
good
morning, everyone.
morning, good afternoon, good evening, buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches,
Buen día.
bienvenidas, bienvenidas. Welcome, everyone. We're bringing in folks, so bear with us a minute while we welcome people to our monthly meeting.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches, bonjour. Welcome, everyone. Bienvenidos, bienvenidas, bienvenides. Welcome, everyone, to our NGOCSW NY June monthly meeting. We are thrilled to have you join us. I think we're still letting folks in, but we want to start on time. We have a fantastic program. We want to welcome all of you and thank you for being here. This is our last monthly meeting of the CSW 70 cycle. And we will be back in September, so we want to make sure that you get all the information you need. We have our feet pointed towards CSW 71, and we're going to bring you information so that you, for those who are taking some time off during the summer, you come back, everyone energized in September to do the good, important work that we need to do. Today's program is going to be stellar. Gender Justice Now, Why the Crimes Against Humanity Must Be Feminist. It's a fantastic program. We're going to begin with updates, and then we're going to go into our program. Please, everyone's doing it really already, they know, but please introduce yourself in the chat if this is your first time, or designate how many times you've been with us. Please put it in the chat. Let us know your name, your organization, where you're tuning in from. And thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to hand over to my co-chair, Pamela Morgan.
Thank you, Rosa, and thank you all. I like that. Thank you all for being here. We're really delighted to be with you for our final NGO-CSW monthly meeting for the CSW 70 cycle. And we're really excited to reflect back, to talk about what we've done during this cycle. We've had sessions that thoroughly examined women's access to justice, women's participation and decision making. We looked at male allyship and mobilization. We looked at the Crimes Against Humanity Treaty, in addition to doing training sessions. So I think that this year has been invigorating. We've looked at a lot, we've learned a lot together, and we're looking forward now to CSW 71. So I'm just going to give you some information about CSW 71 for you to really think about over the summer, for you to begin planning, for you to begin looking at the implications of what may happen in March. So, for those of you who are not aware, the priority theme is accelerating the achievement of gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls in the context of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The review theme is achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls in the context of climate change, environmental and risk, risk, risk I'm sorry, I'm tongue-tied this morning. Risk disaster reduction policies and programs. And then the critical concerns, which is the emerging theme, is going to be poverty and the economic empowerment of women. And we know that goes across everything that we do here, looking at poverty and the impacts, the grave impacts that poverty lives of women and girls in particular, as well as on families. So the Bureau for CSW 71 is going to be, the chair is Dominican Republic, the vice chair is Mozambique, Mongolia, Romania, and Liechtenstein. Those are the critical players for CSW 71. If you have any type of influence with any of them, we hope that you will use it in order to help um, move forward the position of NGO-CSW as well as your own vision for what you think needs to be done in order to achieve the priority theme. And with that, I'm going to turn the floor over. I'm not as dramatic as Rosa. She had that great move, but I'm going to turn the floor over to Rosa for an update on UNA.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pamela, for that information. And just to add, the priority theme we're hearing from folks that it's very large in scope. So part of our work is going to help you all with information, us as well, to maneuver through that thematic landscape. What will come out as priority areas? What can NGOs do? What will civil society focus on? Because it's a very vast, and then we have the secondary things and the cross-cutting one. So please, if you have questions about this, any questions to what Pamela presented, please put it in the chat. Our Q&A is very much at the end, but it's going to focus primarily on the panel. I want to give some information about the UNAIDS reform process, primarily to just give information. We are not taking the lead on any advocacy there or any analysis, but what we do want to do is give information and connect you with our colleagues of the Feminist Cross Coalition if you're interested in delving more into this process. Just in terms of an update, very briefly, we know that there was this assessment released on April 24th, the strategic merger assessment. Following that, we know that we're focusing primarily on the proposed merger with UN Women and UNFPA. And following that assessment in April, there was a legal opinion that UNFPA was commissioned to have regarding the process and how it impacts them. We know also that on May 28th, there was a debate, a briefing with member states that is on UN TV. For your information, if you want to follow up on that. This is a member state-led process. There will be decisions made by member states at the UN General Assembly coming up in September. We also know that early June, there was a joint executive board meetings of UNFPA and UN Women. And we know that both EDs of UNFPA and UN Women are exploring alternatives to the merger. There is a lot of information that is being discussed at the UN with member states, and also in behind the scenes We're not privy to all the information, so we're giving you information here. In terms of looking ahead, there will be meetings of in June and July, looking at ahead at a proposed report from the Secretary General. There's also going to be the high-level political forum in July, the HLPF, where there will be key advocacy happening around the SDGs, around UN 80, meetings around the HLPF on the UN reform overall, by different coalitions, and also focus on the merger. We are hearing that, yes, a decision will happen in September for the UN General Assembly, also known as UNGA, and that from now until then is a very critical window if you are interested in advocating for on behalf of, with your government. This is the time to do that, because the decision, a resolution, will come before the General Assembly in September. So if you, I will leave it to that. There's a lot more information in terms of assessments or points of view. But what we want to do is just provide you with this basic information and basic update, for those who are not very familiar with it, and lead you to any further information that you need if you want to delve further into this process. So with that said, thank you. I am going to turn over to one of our executive committee members, Marlene McLean, who is with Soroptimist International. She is also the communications secretary for NGO CSWNY. And she serves as a co-chair of the Advocacy and Research Group. So, okay, we have Marlene. Marlene, welcome. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to turn over to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving me the chair. The Advocacy and Research Group is hoping to change our process a little this year. We'd like it to become more inclusive. When we put out our recommendations, we would like some input from our members. And the main input will be selecting the topics. We have a poll, which Mads will be able to set up in a moment. And we have 10 or 11 topics. And we'd like you to select your top 5. And based on the most popular, I guess, top 5, we will come up with our recommendations. Okay, so Mads, please read through them and select your top 5. And if there's something you're really passionate about that's not listed, there is an option at the end of the list where you can choose other and give us a heading or a topic you'd like us to look into.
Marlene, can you read through them for our recording?
Sure.
And our transcription?
Okay.
Thank you.
We have clean water and sanitation, decent work and women's economic empowerment, and the third option, poverty eradication. And the fourth option, which is a Soroptimist specialty, quality education and lifelong learning, digital inclusion and enabling technologies, climate justice and environmental sustainability. Then we have good health and well-being, women's leadership and decision-making, ending violence against women and girls, peace, security, and prosperity, financing gender equality, and the last option is other, where you can select it and give us a heading or a topic that you would like us to review. Please submit your top 5, and we'll use those as one of the tools to select and do our recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marlene. We will give a little bit of time to have people select the top 5. Now, just to add that we will be sending this as a survey as well to the larger constituency, but our viewers right now, our participants in the monthly meeting are very important. You're very loyal, many of you. So we value your input. And so we wanted to do a poll. There was no place in my poll to put the content of other. Can you put it in the chat? Put other and then colon and then put your topic area.
Thank you.
Great. And Mads Minohar, our office manager, can indicate whether we're good to go. Okay, we're good to go. So we are right on time. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Marlene. And
You're
Ivy
welcome.
Cook, who is the other co-chair of the Advocacy Research Group, ARG. And thank you everyone for putting in your topics, other topics into the chat. We are going to move on to our panel, and I am going to introduce Amy Banker, who is also an executive committee member of NGO CSWNY. She's also with the Pan Pacific and Southeast Asia Women's Association. Amy, welcome.
Thank you, Rosa.
See you in that lovely orange background.
Thank you, Rosa. Good morning, everyone. Greetings from New York City. This program will bring a discussion on youth perspectives on women's access to justice, bridging international frameworks with local realities, and amplifying young voices for the gender equality. We have 5 guiding questions. 1, tell us about your work and what area of access to justice it centers. 2, how does this access to justice impact your daily life? 3, what are your experiences as a youth in these spaces, and what barriers do you face as a youth? 4, in your community, how do you plan to actualize the agreed conclusion from CSW 70 so they are not just words on paper? 5, how does society need to shift to ensure justice for girls and women in these categories? Now I would like to introduce my co-moderator, Emily Van Vliet. Emily.
Hi, thank you, Amy. Thank you for the introduction, for introducing the panel, and for co-organizing this with me. I'm so delighted to be here today, and thank you for joining us. I am going to, in the interest of time, I'm going to briefly introduce our panelists. Their full bios will be in the chat. But we have such a phenomenal group of young women here today to talk about access to justice, and they'll be coming at it from a few different perspectives and lenses. So first up, we'll have Adiba Atai. Adiba is a 22-year-old English teacher, volunteer educator, and project coordinator at Victory Afghanistan. Based in Herat, Afghanistan, she has continued her education through online studies in coding, project management, and marketing while supporting initiatives that advance girls' education and personal development. A passionate writer, Adiba uses poetry and storytelling to share experiences of resilience, learning, and hope, and is honored to bring her voice to this panel. Adiba, we are honored to have you on this panel. I'm going to just quickly introduce the rest of the panelists, and then I'll turn it over to Adiba. She's going to open the panel for us and share some of her beautiful work. So next up, we will have Cecile Roth. Cecile works at the intersection of public policy, international relations, and feminist movement building as a quality focal point for United Cities and local governments. She advances initiatives on women's political leadership, youth participation, and care systems through partnerships with local governments, international organizations, and civil society. Drawing on experience across Europe, Latin America, and the Caribbean, she brings a global and intersectional perspective to advancing equality, democratic participation, and collective action. We have Loreen Amida Muganda, a Kenyan advocate for women's empowerment, economic justice, and human rights. Raised in a fishing village on the shores of Lake Victoria, her experiences inspired a lifelong commitment to advancing opportunities for women and girls. She serves as program and grant manager at 10 by 3 and was appointed the organization's youth representative to the United Nations in 2024. Through her work, Loreen promotes women's economic participation, education, entrepreneurship, and inclusive development, both locally and globally. And then rounding out our panel today, we have Amanda Arroyo Cabezas. Amanda is a public relations specialist, project manager, and president of the Costa Rican Youth Climate Council. For more than a decade, she has advanced climate action, gender equality, and youth leadership through collaborations with organizations including NGO CSW New York, Nosotras Women Connecting, and Every Woman Treaty. Amanda has represented Costa Rican youth at the UNESCO World Youth Forum, the European Parliament, and the United UN Commission on the Status of Women. Her leadership has been recognized by Vital Voices, NGO CSW New York, and the U.S. Department of State. As I mentioned, we have a powerhouse of panelists here today. And as Amy reflected or shared the guiding questions, we've asked the panelists to open up, giving us some background on their work, the area of access to justice that they work in, and how that access to justice impacts their daily lives. So, Adiba, I'm going to turn it over to you to open us up. Thank you again all for being here, and over to you.
Thank you so much, dear Emily, and it's a pleasure to be here. So, and also thank you so much for introducing me in such a beautiful way. So, I'm Adiba, talking from Herat, Afghanistan, and I work as senior project coordinator in Victoria, Afghanistan. That's an non-profit organizations that's run for Afghan girls about their education. So before I begin, I would like to share a poem that it's a reflect on the voices of many girls that I know. So just briefly, I want to be a horse, not a child belonging to anyone, not a daughter of a mother who feels hatred toward me, a piece of her own being, not a daughter of a father who sells his girl just to drink and have his name and property written on gambling card. A father who sells his daughter, whose hair glows like the dark night and whose eyes like crystal snow on water form in the sky and melt again upon the earth. I want to be a horse that cannot be tamed by anyone except by its own will, not a body for others' pleasure, but one that keeps its pride and dignity in hardship and fights when it must. Powerful yet calm, a horse that stands tall and firm, rebellious against common and force, yet gentle enough to gallop into the depth of down. Thank you so much. So this is why access to justice for me is about dignity, like freedom, having the right to educate, about the girls to shape and also have their own decision about their own future. So I think that's the time to answer the questions. Am I right, dear Emily? Because that's my first time that I'm a speaker here. Yes, thank you so much. So my work focuses on supporting Afghan girls to continue their education through online platforms like Google Meet, Zoom, just with all volunteer teaching. So, and in my community, like education itself has a big camp for justice. So, and on my personal level, so the work affect my daily life deeply. So how, like I see both a struggle and resilience for girls and who still want to learn, and I have to create a way for them to just continue all these things that they really want to do that. And as a young person, I feel both responsibility and limitation. The place that I'm that the place that I am. So and youth voices are often included but not always in decision like making spaces. So we also face practical barriers like limited access to resources and also a stable infrastructure. So still, young people remain adaptable, but we find new ways like we use digitals and we use just continue education even in different or many circumstances. So yeah, yes, just to want to mention that, like, to make CSV20 commitment real, so they just go beyond many things, like beyond many words. And it means that, like, ensuring continuous access to education, especially for girls, and connected global policies when there's like local realities and also and holding real accountability for impact on girls' lives. Again, it comes back about women and girls. So, and without all these commitment, that would be a symbolic things. So, just to close about the questions, like real justice requires a shift in how society sees girls and women, not only someone that just like asking for always for help or just as recipients, maybe I can call that, sorry if I pronounce it wrong. And like justice is when a girl can learn, when a girl can choose her own future, like to without fear, without something that they just have to think about it. And when young women are trusted, so they won't just joining the change, they would be the lead of that change. And yes, thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Adiba. Thank you so much for opening our panel and speaking to access to social justice, right? As we know, there's a gender apartheid going on in Afghanistan, and so we thank you for sharing the voices and reminding everyone to think of the women and girls in Afghanistan. Related to that is access to civil justice and democracy, right? So we have Cecile Roth here, so she's going to speak a bit about that. So Cecile, over to you.
Thanks, Emilia, and thank you everyone for joining. And yeah, I'm happy to make this connection, which we never which is not that evident. And I think we have always this conception of justice very sort of close on very certain sectors or topics. And I think it's always good to expand our perspective on it as much as we can. So, as you've mentioned, I work at United Cities and Local Governments, which is the largest network of local and regional governments in the world. So we work with cities, regions, municipalities, and their mayors and all elected local officials. And in particular, I coordinate the alliances and initiatives that we have on women's political participation, on youth participation as well, and on care. And we do this with all the locally elected women and feminist leaders that lead what we together call the Global Feminist Municipal Movement. And so I will come to this question of justice. I also wanted to share how I came to associate it with local public action and democracy, like to ground it a little bit. And it came first because I lived in very diverse territories. We moved with my family every like 3 or 4 years. It was never part of a like organized plan. It was always just sort of for the sake of it. And so we lived in Corsica, which is an island at the south of France in the Pyrenees. in a very rural and small village in the mountains. We lived in Guadeloupe and French Guiana, which are old colonies from France in the Caribbean and Latin America. And then I also lived in Paris, in Buenos Aires, in Mexico City, in Barcelona now. And this is how I started to be very much aware of, and like, yeah, looking very deeply into how the territorial fractures between these territories are actually what creates inequalities. And this is what later turned into my path sort of towards feminist and intersectional approach. And in the end, all of me, like, I wanted to share this because this is where comes the conviction that local public policies and local public services are really among the most powerful levers that we have for equality and democracy. So coming back to the present, let's say at UCLG in this network, we work with locally elected women, including with young mayors and local councillors, with this objective of strengthening democratic participation and realizing equality in local governance. And this is a question of justice for them, for those elected women, young people, feminist leaders. But it's also a question of justice if we think of the impact beyond themselves, if they did access to power and have really like the space and resources to advance justice. This is for all their communities and territories. There is first, there like justice here can be thought in terms of two things. One is the participation per se, and then the second thing is the influence that you can have when you participate in local politics. In terms of participation, we know that women and young people are very much underrepresented in both local and global leadership because of so many barriers. From unequal access to political networks, also unequal access to resources, to also intimidation, multiple forms of violence, including digital, and also the constant pressure to prove legitimacy in spaces that were historically dominated by men, white Occidental men. So the thing here that I want to highlight as a like starting point for this discussion is that participation often happens within systems that were never designed for us in the first place. So there is this necessity really to go beyond numbers and to really think about how institution can reshape this participation, because otherwise it's just simply absorbing diversity while continuing to operate in the same way. So yeah, justice in democracy goes well beyond inclusion and participation, and it's a question of influence. And this is the second point that I wanted to mention, which is about once you come to participate in local politics, for instance, and this also is the same for global politics, or like global at the global level, multilateralism, etc. The question is, what is your real influence in terms of agenda setting and policy making? Because we also see how women and young people, when they reach office, their approaches when feminists are very marginalized, and they are also very much confined to social portfolios, which is great, but then we also miss other sectors such as finance, infrastructure, security, etc., where the strategic power and resources are concentrated. And I want to finish with sort of a positive note, and which is also part of the work that we do, and also the advocacy that we bring to spaces such as CSW, which is around what is offered at the local level in particular compared to the national and global levels. And we see that the local level is a very powerful entry point for change, where women hold about 35% of local mayoral and councillor positions, compared to 27% in national parliaments and only 21% among UN permanent representatives, for instance. So we see that I mean, still not enough, of course, but still there is this difference that shows that the local level is one of the spaces where we can really work on bringing more justice into democracy. I'll stop that there and then we continue.
Thank you. Yes. I think, making difference on the local level is so important. And it builds and amplifies through the spaces. And I think what we're talking about is so related to what Adiba mentioned when she opened us up is, women, the role of women and girls need to be seen as larger than just people to help and people to go to, and we need to be seen as leaders. So with that, I'm now very excited to turn things over to Amita Lorene Muganda. So if you want to tell us about access to economic justice and your reflections there.
Yes, thank you so much, Emily, and thank you so much, Cecile and Adiba, for the wonderful presentation. That was amazing, what you say, Cecile, about starting change from the bottom up, which is really amazing, rather than waiting for the top government to bring us change on the ground. So that is really amazing. So as Emily, thank you for a wonderful introduction. Yeah, as you've heard, my name is Hamida Muganda. I am a social change advocate specializing in gender equality and women and economic empowerment. I am from the Lake region, Lake Victoria region of Kenya. It's called Muhuru Bay, a very, very small fishing village where I grew up and watching fishing economies sustain entire families. For over 6 years, I've built my career in humanitarian and development work, managing programs and empower women and girls across diverse cultural contexts, from awareness creation, directly supporting the rescue of girls from FGM in West Pokot and Kura regions in Kenya, providing psychological care and also helping reintegrate them into their communities. Currently, I work with an organization. It's called 10 by 3. It's a global organization that has spent over 2 decades helping women achieve economic independence across 7 countries in Africa. So we have 5 countries in Africa that we work with, and also 2 in Asia, which is South Asia, which is Bangladesh and India. And they are offering ready markets for nearly 10,000 artisans across the continents, the 2 continents that I've mentioned, Africa and South Asia, helping them to beat poverty. So our main agenda for our organization is to build economic independence for these women, which we actually act like partners, and then in turn, our goal is to at least eradicate poverty. We also believe that sustainable change comes from shared partnerships and not handouts. And that is why we value equal partnership with the women that we work with. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, I passionately bring for this conversation from lens of a lived experience and not just theories. And my work centers on economic justice, as Emily mentioned, because exclusion, because when women are excluded from economic conversation, and also everything that is happening beyond the local and also the international and also the national governments, it's a form of injustice. Growing up near Lake Victoria, I saw something that is rarely discussed in policy spaces, both locally and internationally. Women who trade fish do not control access to the resources itself. To secure fish to sell and even support their families, some women are pressured into transactional relationships with fishermen who control the catch. So back in our village, like, most of the fish and the nets and everything containing fishing is usually controlled by men, and women has to bow down for even them to get this fish to sell, to get more profit for their families. So this all transaction is usually and properly known as sex for fish economy. It places women in very, very deeply vulnerable situation of exploitation, causing unsustainable economic security for women and exposing them to health risks such as spread of HIV and STIs all at once. So for the people who do not know, is that near the lake region is always known for near the lake region is always known for HIV diseases. Even if you right now, if you come to Kenya, they will tell you, like, oh, the spread for HIV is there in the village, and it's because of this transaction that women have to bow down to for them to even get a meal for the next day, that usually causes this. And there's also always a stigmatization and also discrimination against, like, the people from the lake. I come from there, I know, and that's why, like, it's very, very hard to maneuver and get out. So for the, like, that is what happens when a woman has no independent income and no secure access to resource. Her survival depends on, and it's not unique to fishing. Across the community I work with, land ownership and inheritance remain concentrated in the hands of men. Women who farm the land and sustain households are denied legal ownership of it. And without this land, you know very well that land can also be a collateral. Without it, without a collateral, no credits that can sustain, women can use to, in order to get, like, business, and without that business, no long-term security. This is what I carry into my daily life and my work. Through 10 by 3, I help manage thousands of women across 7 countries to exit poverty through prosperity wages, with promise from them starting 3 small businesses. And in turn, from our side, we provide the market in the US, what we call justice by design. Because rights only become real when women have the economic power to use them. And without it, we don't have any. So women in our program earn wages making baskets from these locally sourced natural materials, and each woman is required to learn 3
Thank you, Amita, so much. Your audio is cutting out a little bit, but I think we've have you finished your speaking? No, your remarks?
also afford quality healthcare. So economic empowerment is so big. It doesn't touch only one area, but a very, very broad area. Yeah. So dear colleagues, for me, this is not an abstract.
Thank you, Amita, so much. We love seeing your lovely face, but I think that the audio might be improved if you go off of camera, just so that we're not missing anything that you're saying. I think one of the most powerful things you said, right? Rights only become real when women have the power to use them, to access them, and that economic justice is so important in accessing, justice on a broader level. So thank you for that. I know we've gone well past time for our first two questions, but everyone has such wonderful remarks and such deep, impactful things to say. So Amanda, I'm going to pass it over to you. Climate justice, the thing that links it all, right? The underlying in everything, right? We can't have economic and social and democratic justice if we don't have climate justice. So please, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Emily. Well, now, first of all, it's like a pleasure to be here with such an amazing women from all over the world doing such an impactful work. Well, my name is Amanda, and I'm the president of the Youth Climate Council in Costa Rica. We're an organization that we're basically all over the world working in different action for climate action issues. But I feel like sometimes in Latin America, which is obviously my experience, we have been focusing too much in climate change from the science part, trying to understand how it's going to affect us because we're going to be one of the most affected regions. But we have not been taking the time to understand the economic and social impact that it's going to be having in our lives. So basically, we're now working on an investigation about how climate change is affecting women. And one of the first things that we found out here in Costa Rica is that there is no data from 2022 to now. So basically, all the public policy that is going to end probably this or next year, there's going to be no data to use. And they're probably going to have to use the old data that we have from 2014, for example, which is over 10 years ago. So I feel like this kind of things is one of the most problematic things about having access to justice, that data, the infrastructure of the state does not have like an awareness of what is happening and how it's affecting women. And I think that's very common like in our region. And of course, it also comes in hand about authoritarian governments. So, for example, we can go to Nicaragua and we can see the case of Brooklyn Rivera, which was an indigenous activist and he was a congressman. He was protecting his territory. He was trying to access justice in different ways. And at the end, he was incarcerated. And on June 1st this year, he died. So we constantly see things like this, and it's not like something new. We also have the case of Berta Cáceres in Honduras, which also happened this for her. She was persecuted by people who wanted to steal her land, basically. So we constantly seeing things like this, and it's very complicated to access justice because there's corruption, there's authoritarianism. There's, of course, no view that the land belongs to the people. And it's mostly seen that it has to be productive. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have, that the people are always constantly thinking that the land has to answer to economic purposes and not, the social life, basically. And we can see that right now in the United States about how they're constructing the AI data like things, for the same. I saw one in New Jersey and the loud, all the sound they're making is completely unstable. You cannot live in a place like that. It's going to affect the entire nature and it's going to be very complicated. I think towards that, one of the biggest steps that we have taken as a region, it was in 2008 when Ecuador declared nature with rights by their constitution. I think was one of the biggest things we could have done because actually show how a countries, especially a government, can actually understand that access to justice implies directly that we need to have a well-being in the communities and of course the nature. Cecile said something that it was that the system was not made for us. And I think that also apply here in climate change. Public policy, access to justice is not made by us because every time we see a climate crisis, women take a role of caring for the community, and they're worried about having access to water for their period, if they are sick, for, to take care of that and things like this. So they have no time to access justice. They have no time to seek out for people who can actually help them access funding to have a new house, access to build something they had before. So I think things like this is also very considerable, that the climate change is also affecting women in a way that no one has ever thought before. And I think it's very dangerous that we're trying to keep these topics like apart, because they should not be taken apart. Because at the end, when the climate crisis arrives in the most monstrous way, because it's going to come, we will not be prepared, because we don't have data, we don't have a system to access to justice, we don't have a reparation model, we don't have mitigations model, anything specifically made by and for women. So I think it's one of the most precise things we need to take right now and start working on.
Thank you, Amanda. And when you're speaking about the lack of data that there is to create new policies going forward, it just is related to this underrepresentation in these areas. Because if women were in the rooms where these decisions are being made and the data is being funded, then the data wouldn't be missing, right? So it all is just interconnected, just as you said. So I know like I mentioned, we have gone a little over time, or we've there's just been so much said. So I'm gonna skip a couple of our questions here, and I'm gonna take us into in your communities, how do you plan to actualize the agreed conclusions from CSW 70, so that they're not just words on paper? Adiba, I see that your electricity has gone out. I'm not sure if you can speak to this, or if you want to respond in the chat. Please just let us know. But I'll open it up. This was intended to be kind of a fireside chat, so I'm really glad that the panelists are interacting. If anyone wants to kind of take this on and tell us about your plans to actualize the agreed conclusions in your community. Cecile, you can go ahead. Thank you.
Sure. So maybe I can just touch upon super quickly on also one thing that I wanted to mention around what we need still to change, and then it will explain what we're planning to do in terms of justice. And I think one of the main thing that we need to reflect on before jumping in already is to reflect, and I'm coming back again on this question of justice around democracy and political participation. I think the deeper question that we need to ask, and that is actually asked by so many people, and this is why there is also a lot of disengagement in politics, is the question of why we would want this power in the first place. And this is something that we hear from a lot of young people, from also a lot of women and feminist leaders who are maybe thinking or not even thinking about entering politics. And this is not just a question of frustration or like exhaustion around the barriers to participation. I think this is something very much deeper. And this is also connected to the crisis of trust in our institutions, and the disinterest and disengagement, in particular in politics. And we know a lot of the reasons why. So we've mentioned that, again, we know that the system was not made for us. We know that democracy per se has quite well coexisted with patriarchy, with slavery, with colonization. So democracy per se, like this, like the idea is fine, but then the concretization has not always been, and actually not at all been, ideal. So there is this need to really rethink how we can use and reshape power before we just want to jump in and say, how can we participate more in that power? So this is for sure something that we definitely want to work on from United Cities and local governments, taking into account the fact that in fact all those movements that have contributed to really deepen democracy and expand rights. So this is feminist movements, labor movements, civil rights, anti-racist movements. Those movements today are actually portrayed as the threats to democracy. So with this question of identity politics, etc. While at the same time, and this is, I mean, part of the same strategy, reactionary forces have learned to use democratic institutions very effectively, and they use its language, but they actually sort of hollow it out, right? So there is a lot of thinking that we need to do before concretely working on expanding participation, so that we make sure that this participation for women, feminist leaders, young people is not just a sort of a superficial way of legitimizing the same institutions that actually reject them or reject us, right? Now, coming into what we can concretely do for I will always say localizing the conclusions from CSW, because we always say that we need to localize the global agendas, or in plural, and localizing is not just a top-down process of implementing from the top to the territories what has been agreed at global level. It also means like more circular logic, and it has to mean that in terms of how we can also make sure and create spaces and mechanisms for local governments to also inform in the sense of shaping those global agendas. And just a parenthesis that this is also what we'll be working on towards the sort of horizon that we have as 2030 with the 2030 agenda, and when we will try to shape what comes next. And I'm saying this also because we know that the next CSW will be most globally on sustainable development. So this is also a space that we can already start thinking about what will happen in like 4 years now, 3 years next year. Concretely, and I will be short, but the proposal that we hold, or like that we create as a network, is to create new spaces. So again, not just a copy of old ones, and not just sort of a superficial participation in old spaces, for young people, where leadership, and again, this comes from local politics to multilateralism, can become something very much deeper than just a question of representation, and where they can actually practice democracy, or like renew democracy, through organizing, through intergenerational solidarity, and through care. And so in the end, it comes to redistributing power in ways that allow, but also sort of ensure that public institutions can respond more collectively and more in a more fair way. Not sure about my English, in a more just way to challenges that we have. We have next week. So this is maybe why I'm not expressing myself as well as I would like. We have next week our World Congress. So this is the gathering that we do every 3 years with over like 2,000 mayors and governors from all around the world. And we're working in this way to adopt there a renewed political framework that will ensure that public services become a concrete expression of justice, of care and democracy, but also of accountability across generations. So there is a very clear commitment to intergenerational justice that we really want to have as our new political mandate for all local and regional governments, so for all the mayors, governors, etc., that will contribute to this moment, and also for the years to come. This mandate will come until 2030, so this is the link with also what I was saying just now. And one thing that is there is also the question of how we can create the spaces not just for young people, but again, if we come back to what I was saying about thinking in terms of real influence and not just in terms of participation, then this means that these young people and young leaders, also young elected officials, how we can make sure that their voices really hold until they get like their priorities and the priorities that they gather and represent from like all other young and youth-led organizations and networks into this political mandate and into this the like sort of an institutionalization moment, right? So this is what we want to work around, not just having young people talking about or among themselves rather, but also having all generations again discussing this and all generations committing to intergenerational justice, including for the generations to come. So it's a lot of concepts around youth leadership, youth participation, then intergenerational solidarity, then intergenerational justice, and then future generations. But they are all linked through like a same thread, which is again justice. So this is how we're like working on, yeah, concretely from the work that we do as a network, uniting all those local governments. This is how we really want to work around the localization of what comes out from CSW 70 and also what we brought there as local governments, and also a little bit like paving the way for us to have this like not in how do you say that very concretely adopted by a majority, and so that we know we also work in this way in a very collective way. And so this is like doing like a, yeah, again, weaving a thread between the local action of each individual local government, but also what we represent and do as a network. And there are like a lot of concrete like and sort of not boring, but maybe boring in this space in terms of mechanisms to do that in the statutory bodies that we have, in the policy mechanisms that we have, etc. But yeah, this is the logic behind the way we want to work on that. Yeah, this year, the next years, and so on.
Thank you. Thank you, Cecile. Again, shifting power, right? Shifting where the power lies. And leaving time for question and answer. Again, we're just going to wrap up today with your last ideas on how society needs to shift to ensure justice for girls and women, and the categories that we talked about, right? We've got shifting the power, making it more equal. Adiba, do you want to give us your final thoughts again? Keeping it brief so we have time for question and answer. Welcome
Thank you
back.
so much. Dear Emily, yes, thank you so much. Maybe I can say welcome back the electricity. So just make it short. I hope I catch the question clear. So how it reflects on women and girls as I experience, like when I graduate, I was in 12th grade in school when the regime changed. So with no experience, with no even like career or degree, so I just drop in from school and just started from maybe I can call that this brilliant organization that I just got experience, like even I just improve my English, how to communicate with people. All this comes from that's like online platforms. So, and as I experienced it, all these things, so just I think if I would be leader for the future, so and just have this opportunity to explore all these things, that would be something to make or just like leave them to do mistakes, cause making mistake is a part of being successful in a way, or just achieving their dreams, achieving anything that they want. It would be maybe a chance for their lives or anything, even education, like about lives. And just like a quick reminder about the words, just let them making mistake. Because I had a boss in that organization, and just in a way that they are like behave with us, they're all for you and they don't need anything to just like need and like help us. But they did it. They help us, they support us in a very brilliant way. And we just not improving about our education or learning. They help us to improve like our confidence. Like now I'm speaking with many people around the world that even I just meet them through like Zoom. And that's like just let them to mistake and be a supporter with them. Not just for girls, even boys that they need help, they need support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, and a quick note for intergenerational solidarity, right? And anyone working in that space, the ability in the space to make mistakes is so critical. I see Ginny asked in the chat if we're going to see the outcome of the poll. We will get to that right before we go to Q&A. Amita, if you want to give us your final remarks again, 2 minutes, so we can get to the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. I really hope my internet can withstand. Okay, so my final remarks would be that first of all, I want to say that for the experiences that I've had, policy that actually advance women economic justice need four things: fair price paid on time, clear paths connecting women entrepreneurs to markets, direct income that lets women build multiple enterprises, and alignment between legal rights and real economic access, because right without a road is not a right. And concretely, I would also want to say that I have two things that I would shift. The first one would be to stop treating women justice as women issue. Economic exclusion like land rights, gender-based violence, these are society failures, not women's problem to fix alone. It is a whole ecosystem that needs to take up their responsibilities. And secondly, I believe that there is need to close the gap between law and lived reality. So the Beijing platform exists, but a girl facing the choices I described earlier doesn't experience those frameworks as protection, making sure she is safe from uh, gender-based gender-based violence is not a declaration. And here is what this shift looks like in practice. Justice looks like a girl in a remote village in Kenya, West Pokot, to not living in a fear of FGM, with the right to her own body, and her parents understanding that this practice is not tradition. It is a violation of law already written on books. Laws simply are not being followed. Justice look like a woman who has been raped being protected and given justice, instead of the perpetrator being shielded out of maybe cultural norms and also family shame. We have seen laws made. We have had people fight for women's right to land ownership, but the question remains: why have we not seen significant change? This is not a responsibility of one entity. It calls for every actor in the ecosystem to champion for one shared goal. So I leave this room with the question: where is the disconnect? Who is failing? And what it is that is not working? So thank you so much, Emily. I really wish you could have all the time the world to answer other questions, but I appreciate this. Thank you.
I know I could listen to the four of you speak all day. Unfortunately, there's a other program that we have to adhere to. So Amanda, I'm going to turn it over to you for your final remarks, and then we'll go back to the co-chairs to share the results of the poll, and we'll open it up to the audience so that they can ask questions of you as well. I'll relinquish my my time, and Amanda, please, your last.
Thank you. Well, now, I think one of the most important things we have to consider is social mobilization, because at the end, it's one of the most powerful tools that we can have to ensure all the mechanisms are being committed and executed. Here in Costa Rica, there is a movement of women working for our rights, because apparently now we can just lose any right at any moment here in Costa Rica, in every part of the world. And I think the only way we can assure that this doesn't happen in these authoritarian governments that we're seeing all over the world is by that. And I think it's most important if we're talking about justice, climate justice, because nature cannot protest. The trees cannot talk, the animals cannot talk. And at the end, we have this huge responsibility for doing it. And for example, we can see it very recently in Albania, how they protest for how they were going to privatize an island and they were going to take out all the flamingos, basically. Raising the voices, social organization, movements, I think is one of the keys of what we need as a world in general. And with that, I think international solidarity is key. One of the CSW conclusions was that we need to ensure accountability for the most serious crimes under international law. And I think we need to understand that also includes what's happening in Gaza with the genocide, what's happening in Ukraine, for example. And we need to raise our voice like globally for this, because this is not all impacting like in a social economic way, but it's also impacting the climate. In Gaza, the bombs that have been dropped is the equivalent of 7 atomic bombs. So, that the impact of that in the entire ecosystem, the oceans and more, is more than we can even know, because we have never seen something like this. The repercussions of what we're going to see in Ukraine, in Gaza, and in other places is something that we're not prepared. So we really need to understand that we need to come up together as a bloc and work together to make sure that the planet would survive to what we're going through.
Thank you for wrapping up our panel, and movement building. That's all what we're doing here, right? Is building a movement and organizing to expect better from our leaders and our communities, from the top down, from the bottom up, right? So thank you all so much for being here. I'm going to turn it back over to Rosa and Pamela. They're going to release announce the results of the poll, and then hopefully our panelists will stick around and we'll do some question and answer from the audience. So Pamela, over to you.
Thank you so much, Emily and Amy, for developing this wonderful panel and the topics. And I am so full from listening to the passion and the content from this truly global panel. We have Amanda from Latin America, Caribbean, Lorraine Amita, who is from Africa, Cecily, who is in Europe, and Adiba, who's in the Middle East. A real global perspective, looking at the international solidarity. And Cecile, you said something that really resonated with me, that we need to see how we're going to reshape it. And that, I think, is really the key, because we see what hasn't worked. And as an elder, my confidence is in you to do it, the four of you, and Emily, to take the stage for leadership in bringing these things forward, because your expertise is sorely needed. So thank you. I'm going to ask Mads to bring forward the results of the poll before we move on. Okay. So it looks like we have 58% decent work in women's empowerment, followed by quality education and lifelong learning, 63% with women's leadership and decision making, and then followed by, I think it's climate justice and environmental stability, then poverty eradication, good health and well-being, and then clean air and sanitation. And in the chat, I did see climate change as one of the topics. So thank you very much. Our ARG is going to take these results and combine them with results from a poll that we're sending out to our membership. And then we'll be able to move on with our recommendations that will be provided to the CSW 71 Secretariat in October. So thank you very much. So it's time now to move on to Q&A. If you have a question for our illustrious and formative panel, please either raise your hand or put your question in the chat, and let's go directly to Nicole.
Hi, everyone. First off, I wanted to thank you all. I'm blown away by all of you and so tremendously inspired. I know time is short, so I'd like to address my question to Miss Adiba, if I may. I can only imagine the difficulties that a woman and girls are experiencing in Afghanistan. And the thing that I'm most curious about and really most inspired by is how have you succeeded in keeping yourself safe while also advocating for women and girls in the Middle East?
Thank you so much,
Okay.
dear Nicole, for yes. Sorry.
Can we take two more questions and then we're going to take questions in blocks of 3. So if we can have 2 more questions and then we'll respond. Are there any other questions for this? Well, Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. If you can hear me, please let me know. I'm Jen Hernandez. I am the Quarterwise Fellow at GNWP, and I'm really interested to learn more from Ms. Arroyo. How has it been trying to do climate financing, especially for youth? I feel like that's something that's really difficult right now, and especially with UNGA coming up and that being a point in topic, I would love to learn more a little bit of what you guys been doing on the ground. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. And Christine, the last question for this round.
Thank you very much for the very, very interesting conversation. My question is, what do you people think can the UN do to help you with these problems, all these issues? How certain agencies of the UN, or what do you think? Is there a plan, or have you some good recommendations how the UN could help you? Thank you.
So we have 3 questions. Let's go to Adiba for the first, and then we'll move to Amanda. And the third question is open to everyone. So Adiba, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So yes, again, thank you so much, dear Nicole, for asking the question. Yes, it's not easy. Like going not outside is like face to face, see your classmates teaching, just sitting in the back, like I mean that in the screen, just talk online. So when I just start from my like learning English when I was 18. It was about beginner, and now it's like somehow advanced. So when I just joined this group, it's all about volunteers. It's about more than over 26 countries that we have volunteers from different countries, different cultures that they are helping us. That's all volunteering. And when I see them, when I just on that time that how they are helping us, how they are supporting us. So I just think that yes, our voice, our life, our dreams, future still matter. But someone just still matter for them. They are thinking about that. And so it's not just about governments and about our people that they have like any other thoughts depends on women and girls. And when I just start working with them, learning with them, so somehow they inspired and just would be a motivation that I just still now I'm continuing. Yes, it's about 5 years. We are going to in 5 years, but we are not just like abandoned from all these things that we are continue or just like to abandon all from these things that we are dead. And yes, and I just wanna quick mention about the third question, UN, how they just I really don't want to say harsh words because yes, it's not possible to just completely change a big government that's like especially from Afghanistan. But somehow, yes, we are not just helping, asking help. We are not asking money from them. We are just asking some opportunity, especially for guests. Like so, we have many topics that we discussed about climate, anything. So if no one, especially mothers like sisters, no one just educates. So how they just control the climate, how they just control the environment. So when no one just educated, no one understand how to even breathe with cats, I mean with animals or just with environment. And still now we just need education. And so somehow like they just close their eyes on us, but hopefully it would be like just freedom someday. Thank you.
Thank you, Adiba. And there are a number of comments in the chat asking people can get in touch with you. So you may want to respond. And the next question was for Amanda.
Thank you. So I think there's a lot of breaches around financing in general, mostly because most of the financing programs or grants are in English. So for the region, it's very complicated when there's no at least one person on the team that speaks English. So I think that's one of the first barriers. After that, I feel like we have been seeing how it has to start to reduce and more the financing, and it's more related to what's happening like in our countries. So it's become like a very complicated thing to, wait, sorry. That's an earthquake alarm. My bad. So I think everything's fine. Nothing's moving. Yeah. So basically, financing has become a very big struggle because we have seen how everything starts to reduce more and more, and it's more complicated to reach. So what we have been trying to do in the Youth Climate Council is to start doing different things. So we're going to start doing climate cafes to try to do like self-sponsoring, and we're going to start launching merch. We're going to do teacher tote bags and other things so we can do. But the thing is that, it's not enough. So we really need more. And I think what's one of the biggest calls we need to do to governments, international cooperation and more, is that they need to focus more on financing in Latin America, more than in the adaptation and mitigation, in understanding that this will not be enough if we don't have like the social component. So I think that's one of the biggest struggles that we have, and it's the biggest thing we have to work right now.
Thank you. And the question, what can the UN do to help people in all areas? Would anyone, and Adiba did address that, would any of the three of you want to address that question? Suggestions on how you envision the UN helping? Please, Cicely.
I can just jump in with sort of a quick answer that is not going into the deep content, but I think one of the thing, and this is why more on like the how we can work together, is around the recognition of other actors than just member states and their roles. And so I think this is also very much a shared priority within all of us together. And from the part of local and regional governments, which I know is a lot quite different, this is one of our main work axis right now with the UN. Working on having their recognition and support in terms of seeing how local and regional government are so essential for anything else that will come out as, again, the global agendas from sustainable development in general to gender equality in the Beijing Platform for Action. Nothing can be very concrete if it doesn't go through public services, for instance, and local public policies. And this is the same, and you will know that much better than me, around civil society and the work that these movements and organizations do on the ground as well. And I think one of the main things that we could work on together, and we are already in so many ways and arenas, again, with the UN and the different agencies on very different topics, but all interconnected, is the work around the alliances between local and regional governments and civil society. So we could even bring this a step further and have joint advocacy initiatives around those alliances between local and regional governments and civil society and grassroots organizations, because it's actually through those alliances very concretely that we can really advance those global agendas that they work on at global level. And again, this for 2030 will be super important. So we have 3 years to prepare.
You're absolutely correct. And your constant focus on the local is well noted. And at NGO-CSW, we agree with you. We've been preaching that same sermon all year, that the focus is on the local work. Okay, we're going to have the next round, and I think that we have time for one question. It's 12:25. We have 5 minutes. So I'm going to ask Cirrus and Sekafor, we're going to ask both of you to be very succinct with your questions, and then we'll ask the panelists to respond quickly if they can. Cirrus, your question, please. Sorry. Cyrus. Okay, we'll move on to Cephacor, I'm sorry.
Safako, yeah. Thank you so
Yes.
much. I
Yeah.
think it's not a question, but an additional idea about how the UN can support. Just a suggestion. Maybe one strong suggestion I have is if the UN can bypass the bureaucratic barriers that local
I'm
organizations,
sorry,
especially.
Cephacor,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is only for questions. It's not for
Okay.
comment. Thank you. All
Thank you.
right. Thank you. Thank you for your commitment to this work. And we want to thank all of our panelists for being here and for sharing the stage. Emily and Amy, this was magnificent. Thank you. I'm now going to turn the floor over to my co-chair, Rosa, for our final hurrah, which is our slogan. So please, everyone, turn on your cameras and turn and unmute yourselves because we are going to have our closing slogan. And Rosa, please explain.
I just want to thank this panel so much. Thank you so much. Oh, bring Pamela back, please. Let's get her highlighted here, included, because we got to do this together. But thank you so much, Emily and Amy, for organizing this, and let's show some love for them and for our panelists. This has been so fantastic. Thank you so much for kind of ending out our NGO-CSW monthly meetings until September. The next one, mark it in your calendar now, September 15th, 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Please mute until a minute from now. So September 15th, 11 a.m.
You're muted. You're
You
muted.
muted yourself. Sorry, I think that was trying to mute everybody. But we hope to see you September 15th, 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time for our kicking off of our monthly meetings towards CSW 71. So now we're going to end with our slogan, equality, peace, justice. Now I'm going to say, when do we want it? And you all say we want it now. And let's see if it turns out well. Let's get everyone in because after this we are going to say our goodbyes. So equality, peace, justice. When do we want it?
Now.
Now. Equality, peace, justice now. Yes.
Bye.
Equality, peace, justice now.
Now.
Now, let's have a gallery view. Open up your microphone.
Okay.
Wonderful. Everybody, please, gallery view, open up your microphones and say goodbye in your language, your mother tongue.
Bye.
Adios.
Adios.
Everyone.
Au revoir.
Okay.
Thank you, Ma.
Take care. Hasta luego. Bye-bye. Gracias.
Bye, everyone. See you in September. Bye.
See you in September.
Thank you all. See you in
Ciao,
September.
ciao. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you in September.